Have you ever wondered what remains of a woman after leaving behind the life she once swore to protect? Have you ever stopped to imagine what the abyss looks like when the lights of euphoria go out? And have you ever felt the weight of a silence so dense that not even social media can disguise it? What we do for love is often beyond good and evil. Friedrich Nietzsche pictured the scene. A dark room, barely lit by the cold glow of a cell phone screen. She smiles for the virtual world, posting quotes about freedom and rebirth, while inside her mind is a minefield. Outside, her friends celebrate her bravery. Inside, an invisible echo begins to open cracks. This is not about karma or poetic justice. It is about the slow collapse of an illusion once believed to be eternal. The attentive spectator can sense how each false applause is another nail in the cross of her own narrative. The first days feel like an intimate carnival. She wakes with the adrenaline of someone who thinks she has conquered independence. She redecorates corners, signs up for yoga classes, downloads apps that promise a catalogue of possible futures. The mirror seems to reflect back a brighter version of herself. Every compliment, every "you look amazing" works like emotional cocaine. At this stage, she doesn't live in reality. She lives in a story. A story where she plays the heroine who escaped mediocrity, convinced that untouched worlds are waiting for her out there. But the carnival always ends. And this is where euphoria begins to decompose into uncomfortable silences. The first real date arrives like a broken mirror. He seems perfect, says the right things, smiles in measured doses. And yet when he extends his hand, the truth strikes like ice. He doesn't know her. He doesn't know her inner storms, the small rituals that held her together, the tear that fell during every abandoned dog commercial. To him, she is just another Friday. And in that realization, the first crack appears. The one she will try to cover with more noise, more outings, more screens. The second act of this psychological ritual is more cruel because it is no longer about brightness but about shadow. The recognition that attention does not equal intention, that quantity is not quality, that the fleeting desire of strangers cannot replace the certainty of a home. And even though her mouth keeps repeating the mantra, "I deserved more," her subconscious has already started its own trial. A trial that accepts no disguises, that feeds on neither likes nor validations. This trial confronts her with what she has lost and condemns her to search in every foreign face for the familiarity of what once was hers. The illusion holds together like thin glass under a storm. She smiles in photos, raises her wine glass, writes empowerment phrases. But deep down she knows her life is now a stage. And every stage requires an audience, requires applause, requires performance. The problem is that the play cannot last forever. Sooner or later the curtain falls, and when the lights go out, the only thing left is the echo of silence. An echo that cannot be posted, that receives no likes. At this stage, she still believes she is free. But the freedom she celebrates is nothing more than the weightlessness of a body thrown into the void. Floating seems beautiful, until the lack of gravity turns into vertigo. She convinces herself she has escaped the prison, without realizing that now she walks inside an even darker labyrinth, the labyrinth of herself. What once had a name, an address, a structure, has now dissolved into a sea of possibilities that drown her. The nights become broken mirrors. She goes out with friends, laughs with strangers, talks with men who look at her with shallow desire, and yet, when she returns to bed, there is a silence that devours. The cold pillow no longer carries anyone's scent. The dark hallway of her home echoes with phantom footsteps. And there, among the walls she decorated with fresh flowers, arises the first forbidden doubt. Was this really the freedom she so desperately longed for? The human brain is a cruel alchemist. It transforms absence into presence, memory into torture. Every detail that once seemed insignificant now becomes a piercing reminder. The way he used to lock the door 3 times before sleeping, the almost automatic gesture of covering her with a blanket if she fell asleep on the couch. The mind-deprived fabricates ghosts, and ghosts always return stronger than the living. And here opens the first wound. The still blurry understanding that what she threw into the fire was not just a man, but a universe. A universe with maps, routes, and coordinates that now must be reinvented from zero. And while the crowd keeps applauding her bravery, she begins to feel the weight of a secret she cannot confess. That perhaps her greatest conquest was not independence, but emptiness. Time begins to do its secret work. What at first seemed like a feast of possibilities turns into a poisoned banquet. She tastes every dish, the easy compliment, the promising date, the improvised adventure, and they all taste the same, emptiness seasoned with anxiety. She discovers that the men who approach her do not want to hear her storms, do not want to understand her intimate rituals. They only seek the immediate, the utilitarian, what is consumed and forgotten. And in that instant she understands that attention is not love, that desire is not care, that the glow of novelty does not warm on long nights. Her unconscious begins to work like a silent judge. She does not admit it out loud, not even to herself, but every new face is compared with the one she left behind. The successful man who doesn't listen, the spontaneous one who becomes irresponsible, the seducer who drinks too much. All of them, without knowing it, are placed in an invisible court where his figure appears as an inevitable ghost. Not because he was perfect, but because he was known, because he was home. And that word "home" begins to echo unbearably in the midst of her supposed freedom. It is at this point that the cracks multiply. Her friends no longer celebrate her achievements with the same enthusiasm. The repeated stories become tedious. The brightness of her independence begins to lose its audience, and with it her character falters. And the cruelest part, each missing applause forces her to listen to herself. There arises a discomfort that no makeup and no trip can cover up. The suspicion that her heroic narrative was, deep down, just a disguise. The mind, unable to accept such a colossal mistake, begins to invent explanations. She repeats that she is experimenting, that she is getting to know herself, that it is still not the time to establish anything serious. But these phrases feel hollow, like a mantra learned only to avoid looking at the wound. And meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking. Each day becomes a reminder that life does not stop to wait for her fantasies to mature. And here emerges the first dark whisper, the one that opens the deepest labyrinth. But wait, because what she has not yet seen is that the worst has not even begun. That phrase is not a conclusion. It is a foreshadowing, because the real collision does not happen when a woman leaves, but when she begins to understand what it means to have departed. Euphoria dies slowly, like a candle burning out unnoticed. She still smiles, still posts quotes about independence, but the smile is heavier now, like a gesture dragging itself along. It is here that the mirage begins to demand a devastating price, because distraction is no longer enough. Now she needs anesthesia. More outings, more men, more validation. Every date turns into a desperate attempt to escape from herself, but what she is running from is not men, nor routine, nor memory. It is from her own reflection in the mirror. Panic comes in different forms. Some become frantic, trying to fill every minute with activity to avoid being left alone with their thoughts. Others lock themselves away, unable to get out of bed, scrolling endlessly through old photos, as if they could rewind time. All share the same thing, the feeling that something irretrievable has been broken. What once looked like victory reveals itself as sacrifice, and that sacrifice was not symbolic. It was her entire life. The theater begins to collapse. Friends no longer applaud with the same strength. Children begin to show the invisible wound of change, and her body begs for rest from so much pretending. But stopping is impossible, because stopping would mean looking the void straight in the eyes. So she invents new narratives, new justifications, new disguises to cover what her soul is already screaming in silence, that perhaps she didn't leave a man, she left herself. Memories return like treacherous shadows. The arguments she once used as proof that everything was lost now seem trivial. The routines she despised now seem tender. She doesn't say it, not even thinks it consciously, but her unconscious begins rewriting the story. And in that rewriting, his figure appears less guilty, less oppressive, more human. And that idea is unbearable, because admitting it would mean accepting the possibility of an irreversible mistake. It is then that her mind, trapped between two contradictory truths, begins to collapse. I was right to leave and I missed what I lost. Two phrases that cannot coexist without destroying the soul. And that inner clash is the real panic. The realization that the price of freedom was not independence, but the condemnation of a mind that no longer trusts even its own version of reality. Psychological defenses crumble little by little, like a wall battered by relentless waves. It is no longer enough to repeat that everything is fine. Nights grow longer, silence is heavier and smiles emptier. She discovers that life without an anchor is not flight, it is drift. And drift sooner or later leads to shipwreck. What once was promise is now threat. Living alone in a universe she herself set on fire, the outer world also begins to shut doors on her. Married friends distance themselves not out of malice, but because she now serves as an uncomfortable reminder that everything can fall apart. The single friends, those who were once her party companions, turn into rivals in a cruel market where every male glance is competition. What seemed like an army of support reveals itself as a scattered troop, incapable of holding her up when the stage collapses. Loneliness, which at the start looked like freedom, transforms into a relentless enemy. Sunday nights become a torture ritual. The empty house, the children asleep, the lights turned off. In that silence, the mask falls, and the forbidden question returns with more force. What have I done? There are no applauses, no witnesses, no possible justification, only the unbearable weight of a decision revealed as irreversible. Her body begins to rebel against so much tension. Insomnia settles in, dreams become nightmares, hunger disappears or turns into compulsion. Her entire organism screams what her mouth won't say, that there is no peace, that every smile posted on Instagram is another wound carved into invisible flesh. Science will call it cognitive dissonance. She will call it insomnia, anxiety, sadness, but in truth, it is the soul imploding against itself. And just when she thinks the abyss cannot deepen, a whisper arrives that changes everything. You haven't seen the worst yet. What's coming is what will truly destroy you, because the wound she now feels is not the end. It is only the preparation for the final fracture, the one she still doesn't dare to imagine. The networks that once held her up begin to unravel. The friends who at first proclaimed her brave and strong no longer respond with the same intensity. Group chats go on without her. Invitations to couples' dinners vanish. And the woman who was once celebrated now becomes an uncomfortable shadow. It is the cruel fate of those who break with everything. Independence does not open worlds, it contracts them. The social circle that was supposed to expand ends up shrinking into a handful of voices, tired of hearing the same story dressed up as triumph. The most devastating part is that, in the middle of this exile, she discovers the hidden truth. He was not just a husband. He was a partner, a confidant, a witness to her most vulnerable secrets. The one who knew how to read her silences, who recognized her in the smallest gestures no one else saw. By losing him, she does not just lose a man, she loses the mirror where her identity was carved. And it is here that the wound shifts location, no longer outside but inside in the deepest flesh. Nights fill with small memories that cut like knives. A song on the radio, the children's voices imitating his expressions, a forgotten object in a drawer. Each detail is a psychological anchor that drags her back to what she tried to bury. The brain does not understand divorce. It keeps searching for him in every corner. And the cruelest part is that the more she tries to flee, the more his presence multiplies everywhere. The mirror begins to turn into an enemy. She no longer recognizes herself in the woman who claims to be renewed, because her reflection is that of someone who has lost her bearings. She changes clothes, styles, smiles, as if changing skins could reveal a livelier version. But every transformation feels hollow, because the problem is not outside. The problem is the emptiness that no disguise can fill. And this is where the narrative splits in two. What she shows the world and what she feels in solitude no longer match. She lives a double life that wears her down like a secret agent in her own existence, a bright facade for others and an emotional tomb for herself. And the secret that begins to pulse in her deepest core is one she does not dare to say. Maybe I was wrong, but if I confess it, I destroy myself. The calendar moves forward, and with it comes the bill of emptiness. What once was shared routine now turns into accumulated wounds. Choosing which side of the bed to sleep on, deciding alone what to eat, enduring Sundays where absence becomes unbearable. Each everyday decision, trivial on the surface, becomes a brutal reminder. There is no co-pilot anymore. And the cruelest part is knowing that she was the one who dismissed him. Finances also begin to bare their teeth. The life once supported by two incomes must now be carried by her alone. What once was security turns into restriction. Dreams that once seemed possible fade away under the cold arithmetic of solitude. The independence she celebrated in public begins to look too much like disguised poverty. And the promise of freedom reveals itself as a decorated cell. But the most invisible blow is to the skin. Not sex, but the hunger for human contact. The hands brushing together in the kitchen, the feet searching for each other in bed, the automatic caress after a bad day. The human body needs those gestures as much as air or water, and suddenly she goes weeks, months without them. Her body begins to sicken, insomnia, anxiety, weakened immunity. Biology becomes executioner. Attempts to fill that void through apps and flings only multiply the wound. At first she receives hundreds of messages, like a shot of dopamine, but algorithms soon bury her under profiles younger, freer of burdens. Validation shrinks into crumbs, compliments become recycled, and the sense of invisibility settles like a sentence. She, who believed she was the center of a universe of possibilities, discovers she is only another profile in an infinite catalog. And just when she seems to be getting used to that invisibility, the phrase arrives that opens a new abyss. You still don't understand what this means. Because what's coming isn't loneliness, it's regret. That omen acts like a slow knife. The wound isn't closed yet, and already another, deeper one is announced. Time is no longer an ally, it is an executioner. Each passing month does not heal, but exposes the wounds even more. The mirage of freedom dissolves like an abandoned altar under the rain. What remains is the brutal realization. She did not leave a bad love, she left an imperfect love. And that difference, subtle yet abysmal, is what torments her every night. Because the imperfect could still be rebuilt. What she destroyed can never return. Regret arrives disguised as late-night messages. Casual words and "how are you?" Those I remember that time. They are not innocent messages. They are silent cries from someone drowning. Sometimes reproaches, other times nostalgia. Sometimes a desperate mixture of both. What they truly mean is always the same. The grass wasn't greener. It was plastic. But admitting it outright would shatter the narrative she clung to for years. The social circle that once pushed her to leap now pushes her into the void. Her married friends drift away. Her single friends compete. And she is left suspended in no man's land. She discovers the cruel law of loneliness. Those who tear down their pillars are no longer invited to the table. The echo of shared laughter turns into a piercing reminder that she chose to be a spectator of a banquet that no longer belongs to her. The real torment, however, does not come from outside. It comes from within, from the shadow that begins staring at her from the mirrors. That shadow reminds her that the dissatisfaction consuming her in marriage was not his, it was hers. That the void she tried to fill with adventure was not lack of external love, but an inner emptiness. And now she must face it alone, without excuses, without scapegoats, without shortcuts. It is then that the question stabs like a dagger. What if he was never the problem? That forbidden question is the beginning of total collapse. Because if it was her own internal war that destroyed everything, then there is no way out. Then there is no easy redemption. Then the enemy was never in front of her, but inside. The mind, unable to bear such weight, begins to crack. Sunday nights become the cruelest ritual. The empty house, the children asleep, the absolute silence. There she discovers it is not independence, not empowerment, not freedom. It is naked existential loneliness, confronting her with the most devastating truth. She does not know who she is without him. And that revelation strikes her like lightning, setting fire to all her disguises. Freud described it bluntly. We are not masters in our own psychic house. She understands this now, realizing that her unconscious betrays her at every moment, reminding her of what she tried to bury. Ghosts do not dissolve, they multiply. Memories do not die, they grow more alive. And the attempt to create a new identity fails again and again, because what was lost is already grafted into her bones. It is here that his figure, transformed by time and memory, returns not as a man but as a specter. The man who was imperfect now becomes idealized, impossible to equal. No new face can compete with that ghost beautified by distance. And in that paradox she sinks. What she despised in life, she now idolizes in absence. Schopenhauer had warned of this. What one possesses disappears the instant one ceases to possess it, and only then does one understand its value. She is a prisoner of that sentence, because now everything she has of freedom, independence, solitude, reveals itself as a worse prison than the one she believed she had escaped. Every daily decision is a reminder of her sentence. Every absence a slap repeating the same thing. You lost what you did not know how to hold, and just when the spectator thinks everything has been revealed, a new portal opens. But wait, for the deepest has not yet been unveiled. What is coming is not only regret, it is shattered identity. This is the third hook, the one that prepares the final descent into the core of the psyche. Regret is no longer a murmur, it is a scream resonating through every corner of her life. It is not just that she misses what she lost, but that she understands with unbearable pain that what she was seeking outside never existed. The void that consumed her before the divorce is still there, intact, but now amplified by the absence of everything that once gave her form. And that void can no longer be blamed on him, nor on the marriage, nor on routine. That void bears her name. Nights turn into trenches where she battles against herself. She repeats that she chose well, that she deserved more, that freedom was necessary. But the mind does not lie. Each justification is another thread breaking apart. And in the shadows, the phrase that destroys her returns again and again. Maybe the mistake was me. That phrase is slow poison because there is no antidote. No one can give back what she sacrificed on the altar of her own illusion. His face appears everywhere, not as a real man, but as a shadow watching her. In her children's gestures, in a fleeting smell on the street, in the songs she swore to forget. He becomes an omnipresent specter, not because he insists on being there, but because she can no longer erase him from her mental architecture. The ghost of the imperfect man is now the statue she secretly worships. Nietzsche had issued his warning centuries ago. He who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. She fought against routine, against boredom, against the imperfection of human love, and in the process became what she feared, an empty shadow pretending to be alive. The monster was never him. The monster was the illusion she fed until it devoured her. And here emerges the cruelest revelation. There is no turning back. Because even if she sought to return, she would not find the same man nor the same home. He too has changed. He too burned in the fire of loss. And in that asymmetric crossing, she discovers the final paradox. She destroyed her world in search of more, and now she contemplates from the ruins how he rebuilds without her.